Hello and welcome to the fourth instalment of our 2022 Vitality T20 Blast preview shows in association with our friends at the Cricket Draft. My name is Aaron, aka the Cricket Connoisseur, and joining me for today's bumper show for the T20 Blast are, of course, Chris in the top right-hand corner. We've got Dino in the bottom left, and everyone's favourite sceptical cricketer in the bottom right-hand of your screen. We have got Rory Law. So, gents, first things first, obviously an absolute pleasure to get you all on for a chat about all things T20 Blast cricket and, of course, the cricket draft. We've had a very, very interesting game week, haven't we? Little bits of weather around. We've seen some fantastic batting performances from the likes of Will Smeed, Liam Livingstone, Tim David, Alex Hales last night as well, 91 from 33. Absolutely exceptional. And talking of game week 3 then, before we get into the preview for today's game week, I suppose, we have to look at the leaderboard of the TCCP cricket draft table. And for the second consecutive show running, at the top of our table, we've got Digvijay. He's absolutely crushing it at the moment, 6,260 points. I believe his lead at the top is around about 600, 700 points. And it should come as no surprise, Captain Liam Livingstone, Vice Captain Sam Curran. So, yeah, Digvijay, fair play. Absolutely smashing it at the moment. Will he still be at the top by the end of game week 4? We shall have to wait and see. Only time will tell. And talking of game week 4 then, let's kickstart the preview segment of today's show with our week overview. Now, in terms of how we usually do this, we usually look at the trends, the patterns, the data, the pieces of news, which you should be aware of heading into this round of fixtures. But for today's show, we've gone down a slightly different path. We've gone in a different direction because we had quite a few questions on Twitter about this week's round of fixtures. And first and foremost, from Old Lesians Cricket Club, we had the question, do you always captain an all-rounder, or is it worth going in with an opening bat for the potential of getting massive points? A very, very good question indeed. So Chris, I'll pass over to you for this question, mate. What are your thoughts on that? How would you go about answering that question for Old Lesians Cricket Club?
So in terms of answering it directly, do you always? I'd say no, but in the vast majority of instances, I would, simply because the all-rounder can have two opportunities of getting big points. They can bowl and bat, whereas the opening bat, it's a lot more volatile. You could capture them and they could easily just get a few runs or get a duck, whereas you've got that kind of double chance with an all-rounder. So I'd probably say go for an out, especially if they're batting in the top of the order and bowling, a full allocation of overs. I believe that kind of gives you the best option. So whilst there may be an odd case where maybe in that particular week you don't have all-rounders that are quite confident with, or they might not have a double game week that week, you might on occasionally. So like in the IPL, I think there might have been one game I went for Butler. But I think in the majority of instances, you're probably best off going for an all-rounder simply because you've got more chance of getting points for batting and bowling. So I'll say, yeah, go for it.
Fair enough, Chris. And again, we have got some excellent all-rounders in this year's competition, haven't we? Liam Livingstone obviously being one of them. Sam Curran, he's been in scintillating form. And then, yeah, a certain Tim David as well. I know he's more of a finisher, but again, an absolutely fantastic player. Could be someone's captain. We shall have to wait and see heading into the rest of this year's tournament. And going on to our second question of the week, this comes from Matt Rothwell. He asks, how much do double game week players impact your team selection? And Dino, I can already see the smile lighting up on that face of yours. I know you want to answer this question. So what do you say to that, mate?
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely yes, 100% from day one going forward. I just try to get as much doublers as possible. And the big hitters, the guys that double that, you can have confidence in. For example, this game week, there's only a few teams that double, but yet I've still I've made all 5 transfers trying to get as many guys in that double as possible. It's risky. I can understand why you would not do it, but I'm chasing the pack. I think 50 points for a guy that I'm looking at, he's going to get 200 possibly. I think it's worth it. That's the way I justify it for me. But yeah, I'm going to lean in one direction and say yes, 100%.
I was about to say absolutely no surprises there at all there, Dino. To be honest, as we've seen with your selections over these past few shows, lots of double game week players. I'm going to be honest, I do quite like a double game week as well, so I would probably answer that question with yes as well. And of course, thank you to each and every single one of you who did get in those questions via Twitter. Of course, if you've got any more questions for us in the future, you can either put them here on the YouTube channel, or indeed you can go onto Twitter. You can find the link to that in the description below. But moving on from those questions and our week overview then, let's go on to our next segment, my personal favourites, which is, of course, our analyst picks. And to kickstart the segments, we have got our marquee name. We've got the banker, the player who you should be selecting as your captain ahead of this week of fixtures. And Dino, seeing as you're already in the top right-hand corner of the screen, I'll start with you first, mate. Who have you selected as your marquee name heading into game week 4?
All right, this week I've gone with Alex Hales. All right, he's finally come good in the tournament in a big way. I'm banking on him. Will I captain him? The weather is out there, it's really, that's throwing me off a bit, but I've gone for Hales. I've got him in because with 2 games, I think this is the guy, one of the all-time greats in this tournament. No brainer for me. I've got to bank on him this week.
Fair play, Dino. A very, very sensible shout indeed. You mentioned about 2 games. I'm looking at the weather in Birmingham tomorrow. Really get the chance to play 2. Does look a little bit touch and go. Does look a little bit dicey at Edgbaston. But again, an excellent pick. And he was in scintillating form in the East Midlands derby last night. So completely agree with that pick. And Chris, moving on to yourself, mate. Who have you selected as your marquee name for this week of fixtures?
So this week I've gone for James Neesham. A bit different this week. A lot of the big hitting all-rounders that we've mentioned in previous weeks don't have double game weeks this week, so I had to look for a different option, and I brought in Jimmy Neesham, who's only played 2 games so far, but has a very high strike rate. He batted with Chris Linney when they racked up over 200 in the week, at a strike rate of nearly 250 odd initially in that game. And then he's also got 6 wickets in 2 games. And also looking at the weather and the fixtures, I think Northants have one of the better chances potentially of getting 2 games in compared to the others. So I thought I'd go for him this week.
I'll tell you what, you can tell that everyone's taking this incredibly seriously this week, can't you? In terms of double game weeks, in terms of weather forecasts, goodness me, we do not leave any corner unturned here at the County Cricket Podcast for the cricket draft. And talking to Chris Lynn, actually, Rory, I think that sets you up absolutely beautifully for your selection this week. Have you chosen the hard-hitting Aussie as your marquee name?
Yeah, it really did have to be done this week. Looking at fixtures, form, he's got Durham on Sunday. Weather forecast mixed, but I'm happy to take the risk on that. I'd say it's probably around 50%. Then Derbyshire on Tuesday. 2 teams that have struggled to bowl up front in the power play. 2 teams that I think Chris Lynn could take some big advantages against. And it's just something that, given that I'm not in as strong a position as Dino, I want to take the risk at that massive points haul with volatility.
Fair play, Rory. Makes sense. And yeah, you mentioned that gap. We will, of course, get onto that in due course as today's show progresses. It was quite the game week for one of the panel, shall we say. At the end of game week 3, they've risen 27 places in the table. So, yeah, we'll get onto that towards the end of the show. But moving on to our next segment then, we do, of course, have our one to watch. And Dino, I'll head back to you, mate. Who have you selected as your under-25 player for this week's round of fixtures?
I'm going to go with a very popular guy here, Phil Salt. He's probably around 30% owned. He's been probably one of the best, if not the best wicketkeeper in terms of returns in this tournament. And I just got to give a shout out this week to Phil Salt, man. At the top of the order, opening the batting. His intent is always there, man. It's good to see. For fantasy cricket, you just want your guy just swinging for the ropes every time, as risky as it might be. I think Phil has been, solid. There's maybe Phillips who could maybe challenge that spot as the tournament goes on. But for me, Phil's been pretty consistent. Even this week with the single game, I'm, very confident to go with him, and the team's been doing really well. Maybe one of the favorites.
They most certainly are, Dino. Yeah, the Lancashire Lightning absolutely crushing it at the moment. Phil Salt, of course, being a major reason why as well. Just on the cusp of this category, is 25 years old. Is the Bottlewood Dan Bradman, but yeah, a very, very nice selection indeed. And talking of nice selections, because I've got this in front of me right here. Chris, who is your under-25 player to watch out for this week? I'm a big fan of this pick, personally speaking.
So I've gone for the Middlesex, I'm going to say all-rounder, Luke Coleman. Even though he's classified as a bowler in the game, I think he's got good value as a bowler because he's been batting 6 or 7 in a few of the games and averages nearly 20 with the bat. He's got 17 wickets. Sorry, he's averaged 17 at 6 wickets at 17 so far. And, Middlesex have got a double game week. Might not play 2 games. Looking at the forecast, I think the game against, I can't remember, maybe Glamorgan or someone, there looks a bit of rain around, but I think he's great value for his price and as a bowler. And he's only 21 years old, so that's why I've gone for him this week.
Again, I'm a big fan of that selection. I must say, it's a shame about his economy rate. That's the only thing I will say. It has been a bit expensive so far in 2022, but a very, very underrated cricketer. So, yeah, I can appreciate that pick, to be honest, Chris. A very, very nice choice indeed. And talking to players, I absolutely love. I love players with 2 first names. Chris Benjamin being one of them, and this guy being another example of this. Rory Law, who is your selection for this week's one to watch?
I've gone with Ben Mike. I do also like players with 2 first names, at least 50% the reason I brought him in. But the other 50% is that he's actually quite good at cricket. Hits the ball really hard down the order, gets a decent bowl. I am a little concerned at the moment about his bowling with his economy rates, but he's bowling a fair number of death overs, which is helping him get some wickets. And he just does seem to hit the ball really, really cleanly. And with that Leicestershire way of playing, he's getting a bat pretty much every game. So putting him in for more points than that average all-rounder batting down the order. So I thought I had to get him in for the double this week.
Well, to be honest, Rory, I would not disagree with that selection at all. Scored 34 from 17 balls against my beloved Bears at Edgbaston on Thursday. So, yeah, very, very good shout indeed, and someone who I've actually selected as well. So I can absolutely back that for this game week. And moving on to our third and final category for our analyst picks. My personal favourite, let's go on to the wild card. And Dino, I'm looking at your selection again. Someone I like here. Who have you selected for this round of fixtures?
All right, under 100K, simple pick, pretty obvious, Rehan Ahmed. And I've gone with him as the cheap pick because this week I have no other cheap guys on the bench on my team, starting 11. Last week I went with Pepper. He's still there this week, but this week is the only cheap guy. I've gone with experience. So this is the only inexperienced guy I have. I like the way he bowls. He's so economical. His trajectory is really low. He makes it hard to get under the ball, and he can hit a couple of boundaries if needed. So this is the guy. He's on everyone's radar. So I'm just highlighting this time around, and I hope he gets 2 games in.
Fingers crossed he does, Dino. Fingers crossed he does. What a prospect Rehan Ahmed is, and has one of the most potent googlies in county cricket. So, yeah, very nice selection there indeed. And talking of budgets, Chris, because this is the under 100 grand section, you're one very, very close to that upper tier, the upper limit of this category. Who did you select for this week's round of fixtures?
I've gone for Joe Cracknell from Middlesex. He's had a great tournament so far. Another young batsman as well. 96k, just fit him in. Great strike rate, 184.7 so far. Double game week as well. So I thought I'd go for him this week. The reason I didn't quite go for Rehan Ahmed, I thought maybe there might be a bit of rain around in one of Leicestershire's games. Although Rehan Ahmed's a great option as well, and also bats. But I've just gone for Joe Cracknell this week.
To be honest, Chris, I quite like that. I really do. That strike rate, 184.7, just absolutely leathers the cricket ball to the boundary. But again, we just need to wait and see. Will the weather be favourable? Will that pick actually pay off in the end? Only time will tell. And Rory, saving the best till last, I suppose, with yourself, mate. Who have you selected for this week's round of fixtures?
I've gone for Freddie Aldrich. He's had a pretty consistent tournament so far. Seems to take quite a lot of wickets for those middle over, for a middle over bowling option. Again, 2 good fixtures up against Durham, which I particularly like for him because they're a team of strong pace hitters traditionally. And, that left arm kind of wrist spin option always seems to be a challenge for most batters because you just don't get to face it much at top level. I think there's a lot of upside for people like that. It's been the same with Lintop for me over the course of the season. It's going to be the same for me for Heldrich. I almost guarantee one of them will be in my team every week.
And rightfully so as well. Nothing beats a little bit of left arm leg spin. It's one of the great things in the game of cricket. So a very, very nice selection indeed. And talking of selections then, now that we've got the analyst picks out of the way, let's move on to our analyst 11s. And Dino, let's start with yourself first, mate. Who have you selected ahead of game week 4?
Well, as usual, I've ring the changes in, and I've got as many guys that can double as possible. So there you see the team going through the first 3 batsmen: Hales, Eskenazi. Pepper stays on the team this time around. He's the only guy that doesn't double on my team. Pepper. So that's the three batsmen up front. Hales and Eskenazi, I have high hopes for them this game week. And again, I said I've gone with experience this round. The trouble I have is with the all-rounders, I can't change them, but I had to get Jimmy Neesham in. And I've done so at the sacrifice the Oliveira to make that happen. We've all become meteorologists now, just looking at the weather, thinking, I think Chris Lynn had a little injury. We're also physiotherapists now on top of being analysts. So it's a lot of work, guys. But yeah, so you gotta make a decision somewhere or the other. So that's what it is. Jimmy Neesham comes in as captain. Phil Salt is there, and then the three bowlers. Ahmed comes in off the bench. Heldrich is there, and I've gone with Roland Jones because over the next 2 game weeks, these guys double twice. So I think he's been, again, another experienced guy that is very consistent, knows what he's about, organized, plans well. Maybe a bit predictable, but I think I'll go with experience because I just want to maintain my position now. No big risk for me this game week. I've gone with the experience, and yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, fair play, Dino. Some lovely selections in there. It does have to be said. And Chris, what about yourself, mate? Have you selected ahead of game week 4?
So for my batsmen, I've gone for Joe Clark, Joe Cracknell, and Daniel Bell-Drummond. Daniel Bell-Drummond hasn't had the best tournament so far, but he doubles up again, so I stuck with him for the time being, and they all double up this week. For the all-rounders, I've gone for Liam Livingstone, Jimmy Neesham, Fuller, and Marine Ali. This is where I struggled because, the big hitting all-rounders, Marine Ali, Liam Livingstone, Sam Curran, they all have single game weeks, so I had to try and find a few in this category to bring in. So I went for Jimmy Neesham and James Fuller. So hopefully they can do the business. And also looking at the fixtures, if I was to pick two counties that have the best chance of playing double game weeks, I'd probably say Hampshire and Northants are up there. So tonight's game, I think the GS Bowl looks like it will probably go ahead. So that's looking good. Keeper, I've gone for Michael Pepper. I didn't make any changes there. He's just singles up, but he's the only keeper I had in the squad, and I didn't want to take a hit there, especially with the weather around. I didn't want to bring someone in that ends up not playing 2 game weeks. And then for the bowlers, I've gone for Luke Holman, Rehan Ahmed, and Freddie Haldrich. Also, they all double up, so hoping for good returns there.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, the selection of James Fuller as your vice captain, that is a very, very interesting pick. And again, we'll have to wait until next show, I suppose. Will it pay off? We shall have to wait and see. But Rory, moving on to yourself then, mate. Our third and final Analyst 11, who have you selected for this week of fixtures?
So my 3 batters are Glenn Phillips. I'm keeping the faith in the Gloucestershire man. Seems to have started to come good. And I've got Chris Lynn, captain Stevie Eskenazi. I'm spying a game at Radlett against an out of form Hampshire bowling attack, and I'm quite liking the sound of it. I think Eskenazi is brilliant. 4 all-rounders, Liam Livingstone and Howell with singles. Ben Mike and Aaron Lilly has stayed in, despite the fact that Lilly has let me down. I'm keeping the faith. He's got a double, hits it hard. I've got Billings as my keeper. He also has a double game week. I think Kent need him to come good at some point. And Heldrick, Harrison and Rehan Ahmed as my bowlers, so I've gone heavy on the wrist spin.
You have indeed, and just some lovely advice actually for the viewers out there still tuning in to today's show. In life, find yourself someone who loves you as much as Rory Law loves Aaron Lilly. That's the best piece of advice you can have from today's show. Absolute unconditional backing. You love to see it. You really do. But lads, that is essentially it for today's show. Just one more question for today, and it goes to you, Chris, the Oracle, because you predicted correctly that Dino would win out of these 2 in game week 3. Who have you selected as your analyst to win heading into game week 4, mate?
Well, Dino's winging the changes, so he's got lots of double game weekers again, so I might just have to go for him as long as he can make up the points that he's lost for the extra transfers. He's got a good side, he's fought ahead. Will the risk pay off? Time will tell. We'll see on the next show.
We will indeed. Again, will Dino take a 3-1 lead? Can Rory get it back? Who knows? Let us know your predictions in the comments section below. But that is essentially it from us 4 here at the County Cricket Podcast for today's show. So each and every single one of you wonderful viewers who's tuned in, thank you very much for doing so. And as always, guys, We'll see you on the next one.